Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the new poll that just came out of Georgia on Wednesday. This video will be coming out on Thursday morning, so it'll have come out about 24 hours ago, and we're going to be doing some analysis of this poll and what it means and why it is so surprising, why it's so important that we look at this poll. So yeah, I think you can read it for yourself. New Quinnipiac poll out of the state of Georgia, obviously a very competitive state, very important state that will be deciding a lot in November. But yeah, Raphael Warnock, Democratic incumbent senator, at 54% of the vote. Herschel Walker trailing at 44%, which is a 10-point lead for the Democrats in the Senate race. The governor's race is a dead heat between incumbent Republican Brian Kemp and Democratic challenger Stacey Abrams. So, yeah, this is quite the poll. Like, usually you'd expect a poll out of a swing state like Georgia to be very close either way, but a poll with the Democrats ahead by 10% is just, to me, really, really interesting and very, because this is Quinnipiac. This is not a Democratic internal. It's not a poll that, only sampled 150 voters. It's not like Joe in his basement called 200 Georgians. This is a poll that has been reputable. They've gotten some things wrong in the past, in fairness. I don't love Quinnipiac, but they're reputable. They have an A- grading. Like, if you look at their grading on 538, they have an A- grade. So Nate Silver and 538 think they're reputable enough to give them that in that upper tier of polls. So I think it's worth looking at. Now, again, this is not my prediction. I'm not endorsing this poll. I do not think, because I know someone's going to say this. It's sad I have to say this, but I'm not predicting a 10-point Democratic victory in Georgia. That would be absurd. If the Democrats managed to win this race by 10%, that would be very, very, very surprising to me. So, with that being said, I think we can talk about this poll, look at what it means, and just get into it. So, yeah, I do want to just look at where we are right now at the average, because obviously, one poll is great, but it's even better when you combine all the polls. And so, for the first time, Raphael Warnock has the lead in the 538 polling aggregate, which they have adjusted to favor Republicans more. They've because in 2016 and 2020, in some cases, the aggregate was very much it was very much a sort of Democratic leaning aggregate. Most of the aggregates we saw overestimated Democratic support, whether it be in Senate races, House races, governor's races, or the presidential races with Clinton and Biden and Trump. They're not going to be great again. I'm not saying that you should take aggregates for gospel, because polls haven't really been good in 8 years. But what I will say is that each year, the aggregates got a little more Republican leaning to kind of balance out that Democratic inherent bias they have. And if you look at what happened in 2021, they were actually pretty good. In the California recall, they actually overestimated Republican support by, I think, 10%. It didn't matter because Democrats won by 30 instead of 17 or whatever they were expected to win by. And in the Virginia governor's race, 538 had Youngkin up by 2, and he won by 1.9%. So, 2021 they were pretty good. And in Georgia too, in the runoffs, they had the Democrats. I think they had Ossoff and Warnock up by about 2%, and they Ossoff won by 1, Warnock won by 2%. So 2021 the polls have been fine. I don't think they're going to be that good again, especially when you see polls that are leaning towards Democrat. Because this is the fifth poll we've seen that's just really that's actually this the seventh poll we've seen, because we've seen polls that have Kelly up by 20, Cortez Masto up by 20. Sherry Beasley's supposedly beating Ted Budd by 4% in North Carolina. John Fetterman's apparently ahead by 9% in Pennsylvania. Mandela Barnes is apparently ahead of Ron Johnson by 2% in Wisconsin somehow. We've seen no shortage of polls that have had really good numbers for the Democrats. I don't believe those. I don't think Cortez Masto won by 20%. I don't think that Budd or I don't think Beasley or Barnes are favored. And I certainly don't think John Fetterman's winning by 9%. But all the polls, the state polls have been pretty consistent. This year is not this R+9 red wave environment that people have been suggesting is going to happen. If that were the case, we'd at least see better polls for Republicans. And people will talk about, oh, what about Biden approval? Yeah, every poll that has Democrats ahead also has terrible Biden approval. If you look at this poll, which we'll get into right now, the Democrats are leading by 10 in the Senate race in a state where Joe Biden's negative 25 in approval. Biden approval is, in my eyes, I think, irrelevant to the conversation we're having. Because when you look at Biden's approval, it was it gets worse every second. And yet the polls have been getting better for Democrats. Roe v. Wade was overturned on Thursday or Friday, right? And like since then, Democrats have been surging. We saw, in April, apparently from I think it was Emerson or Quinnipiac or some decently good pollster, they had the generic ballot being Republican +3. In the same poll, it's now Democrat +8. So that's an 11-point swing. Again, I don't think the Democrats will win the generic ballot by 8, certainly not. But yeah, the swing's been pretty insane since Roe v. Wade was overturned. And again, you can make a case for that. Like this won't last until November, right? Like this momentum Democrats have, but it's still worth talking about where we are right now because predicting where the polls will be in 3 weeks from now is, or even a month from now, is kind of a wacky game to play. Because I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have the ability to predict major events that will not tamper with, because that makes it sound like it's but that will affect the mood of the nation, right, in these elections. So all I'm saying is that now Herschel Walker or Raphael Warnock seems to have quite a good amount of momentum. For the first time, he's leading in the 538 aggregate. For the first time, he is, this is the first time he's actually, won 3 polls in a row that are, real polls. And so, when you look at these polls we've seen, right, obviously Warnock +10, but prior to that, we saw a Warnock +1 poll, a Warnock +5 poll, and then Walker had a streak from January to April. It's kind of like springtime. He was ahead by 1, 3, 4, and 10. Although this is a terrible poll. This is a GOP internal that I think these guys had Trump winning New Hampshire. This is not a great poll, but yeah. So when you look at these internal polls, they're all right. And also Walker was only up 1 by in the GOP's main internal poll in December, so it was a while ago, but it's still worth talking about. Anyways, yeah, so the most recent polls have shown a shift towards Raphael Warnock, and to me that's quite interesting. So I think he has the momentum. Whether you think he's going to win or not, I think we can agree he has the momentum. So let's talk about this poll. So the general mood here is that Warnock is just more popular than Walker, and that's why he's winning. So Democrats overwhelmingly favored him, independents overwhelmingly favored him, which is this is what really matters. Independents right here backed Warnock by a lot. And Republicans obviously backed Walker. And so when you look at gender, Warnock won women by 24 points while losing them by 7. So, again, you want to win both women and men, but if you're winning one group by 24 and losing the other by 7, that's a trade-off you'll be willing to take. He leads. So the interesting thing here is that Warnock leads voters 18 to 34 years old by, this is 34%. And the interesting thing here is that despite the fact that this electorate is Warnock +34 with the demographic, Biden is -25, which kind of corroborates my belief that a lot of Biden's people who disapprove of Biden are just progressives or people on the left who are going to vote Democratic but just don't like Biden. And I don't think that's kind of why I don't think Biden's approval will affect the midterms that much. Obviously, if Biden's approval goes up by 10 points tomorrow or goes down by 10 points, it obviously means something. But unless it gets so bad that Democrats are getting dragged on everywhere, I don't think it'll mean that much. Anyways, voters 35 to 49 years old prefer Warnock by 20. Voters 50 to 64 are split, 49% with Warnock, 48% Walker. So Warnock +1, which is interesting because if you look at the demographics, what happened in 2020 with people aged 50 to 64, let's go to exit polls in Georgia. Voters between that, I guess it probably gets more Republican actually, but you add in the 45 to this age range preferred Trump by 7%. They're now supporting Warnock by a point, which I think is tied to the fact that Herschel Walker is a scandal plate candidate who I think is the worst GOP Senate recruit of the cycle. Just for those of you who don't know, he allegedly has 3 kids out of wedlock who he doesn't parent. He had a restraining order filed on him by another woman who I think was she was his partner for a bit, and they are now not together. But yeah, he has a lot of scandals, and it's only June, and let's be real here, the Warnock campaign is probably sitting on a lot of stuff they're waiting to release in October when it's more fresh in voters' minds. But yeah. And then obviously Walker leads, with boomers by 7%, despite, and this actually isn't that good because Trump won boomers in Georgia by 12. So Walker is underperforming Trump everywhere. And this, again, could be just Roe v. Wade getting overturned, Democrats having a momentum shift, but you don't want to be underperforming Trump literally everywhere. Trump lost the state. So, let's just talk personality, because I think a lot of voters vote on vibes. 21%. So 54% of voters believe Warnock is honest. 56% believe he has good leadership skills. 59% believes he cares about the average Georgian. This is a poll where 54% of people are supporting him. And yet we're seeing that there are some Republicans and people who aren't voting for him who still think he's honest, or has good leadership skills, and cares about the average Georgian. That's a pretty good poll. Let's talk about Walker. Walker, 43% believe he is not honest. 43% believe he does not have good leadership skills. And I guess this is one of the better parts. He is +2 in terms of the people that believe he cares about the average Georgian. So that's, I guess, the one silver lining, but he's only +2, whereas Warnock is +26 in the same category. So, right here, when you look at this poll, pretty good for Raphael Warnock. I think that, you could go as far as to say he's favored right now. Stay tuned for my Senate prediction, by the way. It's coming out in a few weeks. Governor's race. This one's a little more interesting because it's tied. It's 48% for Abrams, 48% for Kemp. Let's talk about it. So, Republicans back Kemp, Democrats back Abrams. The interesting thing here is that independents are pretty split. They're pretty solid for Warnock, but with Abrams, she only has 50% of them. So, she's underperforming Warnock, but she's still leading with independents. Abrams won women by 13. Warnock won them by, I think, 24. That's an underperformance. And Kemp won men by 17, when Walker only won them by 7. So, as you can see, Kemp is leading the ticket for Republicans. Warnock is leading the ticket for Democrats. So I think, again, if you're thinking, well, what about a potential split decision from Georgia? What if they elect Kemp as their governor, but Warnock as their, reelect him to the Senate? I think that could happen. That could very well be the result we see. I think, as of right now, that might be the most plausible outcome. Abrams won black voters by 70. By the way, she has to get this up. Because Democrats Georgia have to win at like at least 87, 88% of the black vote and have good turnout. So this is a little concerning for Stacey Abrams. She needs to get that up. Kemp. So this is the bad part. Kemp for Abrams. This is the bad part for Abrams. Kemp. She's only getting 29% of the white vote. In 2020, if you look at what happened in Georgia with this race crosstabs, Biden got 30%. So Democrats have to get, like I said, I think Democrats should try to aim for a third of the white vote in Georgia. Biden got a little less than that. Abrams is at 29%. So Abrams is not where you want to be. Biden did the bare minimum, barely won. It's only because he had good black turnout and because black voters made up 29% of the electorate. And earlier, I'm not sure if I pointed this out, but when you look at the Warnock versus Walker crosstab, Warnock was receiving 35% of the white vote. Abrams at 29%. That's really bad for Abrams because I think we can all agree that Raphael Warnock is going to outrun Stacey Abrams, right? But if this is a concerning poll for Abrams, it's good for Warnock, but it's concerning for Abrams because if Warnock's winning by 10 and she's only tied, that's bad because if she's running behind Raphael Warnock by 10%, she could easily just get blown out here, right? So, again, the crosstabs here are good for the Senate Democrats, but for Abrams, she's got to be worried because she's only at 29% of the white vote, while Warnock is at 35%. She also leads younger voters by less. She leads. Interestingly enough, she only leads the 35 to 49-year-olds by 5%, where Warnock was winning them by a lot more. This is a flip here. Kemp leads this demographic by 7%, while Warnock won them by about a point. And then Boomers, he won by 20%, while Walker won them by, I think, 7. So, personality traits here. Once again, Kemp is +6 on honesty, plus 21% on good leadership skills, and plus 9% on cares about the average Georgian. So pretty good for Ryan Kemp here. Abrams did well too. She is plus 10% honesty, plus 14% on good leadership skills, and is plus 16% about caring about the average Georgian. Now, when you look at the most urgent issue, inflation is number one. And this is, on the surface, this is pretty good for Republicans because inflation isn't too good right now for Democrats. But remember this. Inflation is the number one issue in a poll in which Raphael Warnock is winning. The Republicans think that they can do well in the midterms by campaigning on inflation and inflation only, but in this poll, they're down by 10%. We're getting a sample that overwhelmingly thinks inflation is the number one issue, and they're still voting for Democrats. So that's not good. Next up, gun violence, abortion, and election laws. So, again, pretty split electorate in Georgia. 67% of Republicans said inflation with no issue, reaching double digits, and 26% of Democrats said gun violence, and then racial inequality, abortion, then inflation, and election laws. Although I think election laws means different things for different people. For the Republicans, it probably means some of them think the election was stolen or whatnot. For Democrats, it means voter suppression. They're concerned about gerrymandering or voter suppression and don't like the bill that was passed last year by the Georgia Republicans that made it harder for people to vote. Now, when you look at job approvals here, Biden, not popular. I said he was down around 25. Yeah, he's down 27. Well, Kemp is up by 5, and they don't have Warnock, but yeah, Kemp is up by, yeah, so Kemp's up by 5. So he won his primary in April, or May, was it? I don't know. I think it was in May. But so he's had a pretty good 2022 so far. He's winning in every poll. He's +5 in job approval, so he's having a good time. But Biden's not having a good time. Biden is down by 27 in Georgia. And so, again, for Joe Biden, that's bad. But for Warnock and Abrams, it's fine because they're still competitive and even winning when Biden's -27. And so, unless you're telling me that Biden's going to somehow fall by 15% between now and Election Day, then yeah. I don't think that the Republicans can just rely on Biden having a terrible approval rating. Oh, here we go. Warnock, 49% approve, 39% disapprove. Ossoff, 42% approve, 39% disapprove. It's probably the same 39% disapprove of these two. And then Warnock's just more well-known because he's actually running a campaign. And Raffensperger, interestingly enough, the Republican Secretary of State, 45% approval, 30% disapproval. So that's pretty interesting. So yeah, I think that to me is about, that's about it for me. I think when you look at this, like you can look at the crosstabs on your own, I think, but I think for now, the takeaway here should be that, Biden, not too hot right now, but Warnock up by 10%. Abrams in a tough race, although again, this poll should be a bit of a warning sign for her if these things continue. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the analysis. If you stayed all the way, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye, guys.